Hello there, and welcome to Dance of the Soul. And we are having technical problems, and I'm just kind of curious if you guys can hear me because Regan couldn't hear me. So I just wanted to check in, and if you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up or something like that. So this is Natasha Venter, and I am here as an Gosh, sometimes things are crazy and you just can't get your mind straight. So, whoever's watching, can you give me a thumb up if you can hear me? Can you give me something? Because Regan couldn't hear me, and I just want to make sure that I'm talking and we're doing this correctly. I'm grateful for that. And so, with that, welcome to Dance of the Soul. Thank you very much for the thumbs up. We're here for Dance of the Soul. And it's amazing how we're in this minute of doing things. And I'm Natasha Venter, and I'm going to start this kind of over again as I flubbed up the very beginning. I'm an intuitive medium, personal awareness coach, and we are here to do the work to help you manage life. And both my shows that I do, Life Clarifications on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, I love to support. And Regan's here with me to give another perspective. Because Regan, who's usually here, but he was on his phone again and having some technical problems as life is happening. I think this is a Mercury in retrograde year where we're having technical problems and we're having, scenario problems and that kind of thing. And it just seems like when Mercury in retrograde usually deals with communication, technical scenarios and that kind of thing. So it just seems like a lot of people are having problem those kinds of things this year. So with Regan being a hypnotherapist through the Newton Institute, and we're going to try it again. And
Yeah,
hello, Regan. Oh, yay. So
I can hear you.
I don't know what was going on.
That's fixed. That's good.
Yeah. So sometimes we just got to take a pause and keep moving forward. And I was just explaining that you're Regan.
Yeah, working good.
That you're Regan, and you're a hypnotherapist through the Newton Institute. And, I just wanted people to know that, we just kind of take this perspective about life and managing life and doing what we can do to support people through, just life in general. And, you came up with this wonderful topic today to talk about things. And I know you're still kind of getting settled in. So
No, that's good. I can hear you.
Okay. And I can see you fine. And the beautiful view, you're still there setting up
We're
your
back
room.
again.
You're back again. Oh, so you left.
Yeah, we went home for 2 days and then came back. It was just, I just put the TV, mounted it on the wall today and put a couple pieces of furniture together. We had about another 10 Amazon and UPS and everything deliveries. So it's, it's just like our lives. We don't realize how over time, how much furniture we have. You get a little here and a little there, and 10 years later, when you have to move, you go, how do I even move all this stuff? So
I hear you. I hear you. I've been in this home for 24 years now, and it's like right now I know I could probably pare down. Yet at the same time, though, everything that I have and within reason, I mean, I know that there's things I can get rid of. Like I have some spiritual books that I don't check in with, but for some reason having them there gives me, knowings, just having the books there. And, it's just one of those things that you kind of go, okay. But you came up with this wonderful idea, and I'm so glad your cough is better. It sounds a lot better.
Yeah. Is in the green room, is Elsa in the green room?
No, she's not yet. So we're going to be having this guest.
Okay.
On. And I told her when I emailed, I get, you saw what I sent her. So she knows, about 15 minutes.
So maybe she won't log in until, a little bit into that. Well, people that are listening today, as therapists, Natasha and I, we do therapy. It's like we use different modalities to try to accomplish the same thing. And it's just good for people to realize how many modalities there are out there that can help you to get to know yourself and to help you to fix your problems. I happen to think that these are two of the best ways, because it seems like we can go a little bit deeper than some other modalities. Like, hypnosis is a really great modality. Mediumship is a great modality. Then there's, with your regular therapy, as a regular therapist, I have other modalities that I incorporate in for my clients that don't want to get too spiritual. They're just more earth grounded, and that's all they're interested in. And so there's some great modalities that help there, where the people can actually understand more about their personality, like why they are the way they are. Now, don't you find, Natasha, that a lot of times, people's personalities and everything have been formed by the events that have happened in their life, the parenting they've had, of course, right?
Hands down,
Yeah.
that is, I would say, our experiences and our influences from elders. And I call them elders because they're older than us, but
Yeah.
I've known a 3-year-old being an elder. So it's not necessarily that they have to be older than us, but our elders, who sometimes they're not our best caretakers as elders,
Yeah.
that they have taught us many things. And I'm not going to say it's just people, because experiences bring in a lot of that. And and I've had somebody who, a couple people have said, I've been going to counseling forever, but you give a different perspective, because you and I both have this understanding that there's a bigger picture, past lives, and yesterday lives in this human body, that kind of influences. And a lot of I think counselors know that, but not necessarily in the backwards, how far back things can go.
Yeah. Sometimes clients, they go, well, like say with the past life regression or uh, something like that, they go, well, what's the use of that? And I say, well, the more you know about your backstory, the more you know about yourself. For instance, what we're used to when we say backstory, that's a term we use in Hollywood when I was an actor there for years. When you're given a character to play, um, in order to know how they'll react to a certain situation, in your mind, you have to create a backstory, like how they got to be, to think to think how they think now. For instance, if someone had been severely abused or something as a child or in their life or something, when a certain question or something comes up, they're going to answer it differently than somebody who didn't have that. So,
Yes.
now most people are pretty familiar in this life with their backstory. Although what's interesting was a lot of things that happen to you, when you're a young child, your mind buries, so you don't even have any. In other words, if you were abused when you were 2 or 3 years old, you may not. That may have psychologically damaged you, but you don't, in your conscious mind, remember that particular incident. But you're still acting and reacting as if inwardly that you've been abused and it's messed you up. So sometimes in regression therapy, where, in other words, this ain't going to past lives, this just means in hypnosis we can take people back to where, and open up their subconscious, where they can remember things that their conscious mind doesn't remember. And sometimes in that, like for instance, I had a client that he thought he was abused, but he wasn't quite sure. So in a regression, it went back to when he was like 4, 5, or 6 years old, and his sister's girlfriend had sexually abused him, and he kind, it's like part of his memory could, felt like it, but then he didn't really have a thing. So anyway, he got a clear picture of it, but he saw that she wasn't being abusive to him in a way that we think of that kind of thing. She was just a young girl curious about, it's like kids playing with dolls and they dress them and undress them and that, because of things that they've heard or thought, and they start being curious about the body and that. And so he was able to let it go, because he was looking at it like in a perspective of like, oh, I've been with that word abused, and how we look at it mostly for people. So his mind started thinking, oh, something's wrong with me and whatever. And then he realized it was just kids being kids. So that was really good in that instance. So he was able to let go of that.
Yeah.
And then what you do, Natasha, too, and what I do too, is like I've seen you work with so many people, and when you pick up a past life, and it always seems to be that whoever's up there that you're funneling is showing them a past life that has some sort of connection to their current life, right? You
Yes.
know, in other words, then it has some validity or it has some purpose, you know, for seeing that.
Exactly. Well, I couldn't. Why should I want to look at all past lives? There's
Right.
there's the one that gets pulled out for me out of some people call it the Akashic records. Somebody calls it the library. I just call it, it's out of the big system, and I just get pulled out that one that really makes a difference. And and I even want to go back to the abuse thing, because I know for me that even me being who I am, and yes, I've been intuitive my whole life, I even covered up being abused. And it took my husband, now that when he came over me, that I felt this dark shadow. And then I finally went to someone who I've gone to a lot of different times in my life because of being, um, I didn't have a lot of self-value a lot of my years because of being so dyslexic, that I was very low in my self-esteem and that kind of thing. So my dad made sure that I talked it out many a times with somebody. And he says, I think you were abused just because of the way that I just all of a sudden opened up to that. And
Yeah.
then finally I got the image of what happened. And I even had a scenario with my neck. And part of that is that when his brother opened up the door and saw what I was doing and he closed the door, I turned and looked to him. And so for a long time, I had a hard time turning my head to the left,
Yeah.
because of an unconscious body conscious knowing.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
mind had shut the door on it.
and I would tell, you know, people too, with these great modalities that work really, really well, and we'll probably speak of three or four, and I'm sure there's a dozen modalities that different therapists use, but they're all to try to release some of the energy, some of the bad feelings that you have, you know. And so I tell most people, my clients, I say therapy can be fun. I mean, just think about it. It's like going into a place and getting a makeover, you know, instead of
Hmm.
it being physical where you get the wrinkles out of your face and then you look in the mirror and you go, oh man, I look so handsome, or I'm 20 years younger now, you know, I feel sexy. You know, it's the same way in therapy. It's like as you start dumping these things, it's as if the wrinkles in your face are going away, and the creases and the anxiety, you know, lines in your
Hmm.
faces and everything go away. So who, you know, when you think about it, who wouldn't want to do that? It's like I tell people, it's maybe a momentary or just for a little bit of an emotional pain, like going to the dentist. You need to get your tooth fixed, you know, because it's hurting you all the time. You're taking pain medication, and you know that you're going to have to get a shot so that you can get in there and do the work. And so it's just like getting the shot, and it just ouch for just a minute, you know, and you go, oh, ooh. But then you have that realization of what your issue is, and you begin to heal, you know, so that
Hmm.
you can begin to feel like a real person again, and let, you know, you don't have these things. You know, dragging you down. Um, so,
Exactly.
so
That's one thing that I've noticed. Every time that I found a little bit more piece of myself, it was like, hallelujah, welcome home, because it was more like, now I can release some of that stuff I was feeling,
yeah,
you
and
know.
yeah, so a lot of it, they have books called, you know, it's about doing shadow work,
Hmm.
and this is about, you know, your baggage, your shadow, the things you fear, all this kind of stuff. It just kind of follows you around wherever you go. And once you have the strength or the guts, in a way, to just turn around quick and look at that shadow, you know, then you can see clearly what the issues are, and you can start working on them. And you realize that, you know, like the guy from England said, no, you know, nothing to fear but fear itself. You know, it's
Hmm.
just, you know, it's not there. So I would encourage people listening to this. Uh, you know, hypnotherapy works really good. Going to a medium works really good. If you have some specific questions that you'd like to, you know, get more of an overview of what's going on in your life. And in traditional therapy, there's EFT, which is tapping. Um,
Hmm.
you know, that's where you go around to the different meridians, which, and it sounds, you know, when I first heard about this, I thought it was so silly. I just thought, oh, come on, that's silly. But that's one of the
It
biggest
works.
modalities that they use for regular therapy now, because I've had clients that have fears and phobias and they're gone in 10, 15 minutes. Things they've had their whole life and they don't come back again. And people with PTSD, 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, they pretty much got their life back again. Where before the old modalities they had, you only had talk therapy pretty much, and in the old days, and the only way that would get you better is that you talk about it time and time and time and time again, and it just gets a little bit less each time, because you dilute it, that way. But
Mm-hmm.
that would take years sometimes. But these new therapies are just great.
Aren't they?
EMDR. Yeah, you're familiar. I know, Natasha, we talked about before EMDR, which is you talk about an issue. They have if people that are in trauma, I just have them follow my finger as they're talking about their issue. And all of a sudden, the energy from that just disappears. It's just like magic,
Well, and
works.
that's the thing is that I've noticed that, like, I have another one where you hold certain fingers, and that helps the body.
Yeah.
If you hold it, if you help the body go through the mental mind process, it seems like things just move forward, and a lot of people forget that it is about the body. The body has certain pressure points in it. And my dad being a chiropractor, he was the kind of chiropractor that he wasn't the one that you just go in and snap, crackle, pop. He always said, our bodies are like a computer. If you do work on this, you'll interact with that. And if you interact with that, and I was always the one that like the older people who couldn't do muscle testing, because he would do the muscle testing. I'd be the surrogate muscle tester. And so I would touch in certain places on their body, and he would muscle test with me. And it's just knowing the computer of the body. It's amazing how this works. And this might be a great time to bring is it Elisa?
Elsa.
Elsa.
It's
Sorry,
Elsa.
I'm so I have names are my worst for being dyslexic. I apologize, Elsa. So here we go. So Regan, I'm going to let you introduce Elsa.
Yeah, okay. I'd be happy to. Hey,
Hi.
Elsa.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us today. Yeah,
Sure.
I'll tell you. And Elsa, I don't know. I know some things about Elsa, but she can maybe fill us in another. I know she's an accomplished therapist and worked for years, in a very difficult population to try to help people with their issues. And she's one of the things she used is something called the Enneagram. It's ENNEAGRAM. It's just like it sounds, Enneagram. And Elsa, from all the people that I know, she has the most overview, or that has understands it more than everybody, because there's a simple version, which we can tell people, but then she's able to dig into it deeper and know how different types of people react with different types of people. And Elsa, what we've been talking about so far is just different modalities that us therapists use, like EFT and EMDR and hypnosis. But Enneagram across the board for the therapists that use it, like because of Elsa's influence, and actually my wife's, Patricia here, she knows more about it than I do, and she's not a therapist because she's read books, and Elsa and her are good friends, and so they've been, Patty helps me a lot of times that way. For people listening, Elsa's going to give us, maybe you can give us kind of a history of it. Let's just say, not like I'm a novice, I don't know anything about it. How would you explain how this great modality works?
I'm actually go off track, so we're going to do whatever comes up, right?
Okay.
Hi, Natasha. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Nice to meet you too. And if you would like to start off saying a little bit about yourself, because your history sounds very interesting to me, about just a little bit that Regan gave me, and just knowing that being a therapist alone has a history of just I know confidentiality, and I have great confidentiality in my own practice myself, that as you work with people and navigate through people, there's a quite amazing process that you become yourself with. And so if you'd like to give a little bit about who you are, that'd be great.
Okay. So I'm originally from Hong Kong. And I've been a therapist since the 90s. And I also done a lot of crisis work. And I also do something, it used to be called critical incident debriefing. And now it's called disruptive event management service. So we deal with disasters, earthquakes, like the North Bay fire and things like that. So I do those trauma work, things like that. And yes, I love the Enneagram, and I use other system as well. And in terms of Enneagram, thank you for the introduction, Regan.
You're
I
welcome.
see myself more of a student of the Enneagram. I've been studying it since the 1990s. There's some great teachers out there that are really expert at this. But I love it, and I love using it in my work with clients. We are different therapists have different focus. Some really focus on what we have in common. I tend to focus on the individual differences, that we all come with a different focus in life, with a different lens, a different personality, different tendency, right? So if you look at people, you have people in the room, if you have them focus on the red, you have a couple in your room, okay? And you have the one partner focus on the red, put the red in front of her, and
Oops. He's focusing on the red.
yeah,
Okay, we lost you at focusing on the red, Elsa. You got
your internet's a little glitchy, so I apologize.
So what happens after one person focuses on the red?
One focus on the red and one focus on the green. So you remove that and you have them look around the room. The one who's been staring at the red sees only notice the red stuff, right? The one who's been staring at the green only sees the green stuff. But the thing is that this happens all the time in life. Okay, so and with the Enneagram, we're going to start with the three centers, three of the type, there are 9 types. 3 types are heart-centered, and 3 types are gut-centered, and 3 types, gut means body, and head-centered, right? And so their focus is already different. So you can have one partner speaking from the head, the thoughts, and the other partner speaking from the heart, and they can miss each other. They can misunderstand each other, right? And you can have a positive type, 3 of them are positive type, 3 are intense type, and 3 are competent type. So when I work with people in crisis, let's say the North Bay fire, I show up and I go there. The first thing I have to know that different people respond to crisis trauma differently. And I can't just speak one thing and assume they're all the same thing. And there are people who so I'm working with responders, right? And some are not, they were mandated to be responders. It's not something they chose to do. They don't have the training to be first responders. And suddenly, because of what's happening in the country, they're forced to be responders. And some will run towards the crisis and say, I'm going to help. And some with, I need to go home and take care of my family. And so I walk in, and so the ones that are who wants to go home can feel guilty, feel bad. And so my job is to tell them all those different responses are valid. A part of being human, right? And so, but going back to the Enneagram, so there's the 9 types. So we start with the 891 is the gut type, the body type, which is also called the anger type. So the boundary, they work with boundary, and so the anger shows up differently in the 891. The 8 is the boss. They call the boss. Is anger outward. I don't like something, I will call it out and I would talk about it. So the energy can be intense. And then the 9, which is what Regan is, and then there's the 1. The 1 is anger repressed or suppressed. So it can show up as irritation, frustration, judgment, resentment. That's how anger shows up, kind of repressed. They might even say, I'm not angry, even though they're resentful. And the 9 in the middle is a body type, but it can be disconnected from the body. It's called anger falling asleep. Okay, so that's the body type. And then you have the 1, 2, 3, which is a heart type. 2, 3, 4 is the heart type. The 2 is what we call the people pleaser, the caretaker. So when you see them, They're very warm. They're very interested in you. They might focus on you. They might read your needs, anticipate your needs. And the 3, which is Regan's wife, they are called the achievers. They're really focused on being successful. They always have a to-do list. They get things done. They can make things happen. I really wish I have some 3s in me. And I can use some of that. And the 4 is called the individualist. And that's the type that wants to be, for them, it's important to be authentic, to be unique. And it's escaping me now. So their focus is different. The 4 tends to look within, to focus on the self, and the 2 is to focus on other people, and the 3 is to focus on getting things done. So even though the 3 is a heart type, they can be disconnected from their heart sometimes because they're so into doing, right? And then you have the 5, 6, 7, which is the head type. The 5 is God, this is an old term. They're like the expert, escaping me. They're the observer. Okay, they tend to observe life than to be participate in life. They are sensitive in a certain way, in that a lot of them, not all of them, would need their space. They tend to kind of withdraw and live in their head. People like Bill Gates, I think even Elon Musk, they're the head type. And then so that's the 5, and then there's a 6, a 5. So 2, 3, 4 going back is a heart type. They might be dealing with shame and sadness. And 5, 6, 7 is the head type. They might be dealing with anxiety and fear. And there's anxiety and fear shows up differently. And sometimes, kind of like Regan being the 9 in the anger triad, you can't tell he's an angry type. So 5, 6, 7, with a 7, you can tell they are the anxiety type because they deal with it differently, right? So the 6 usually embodies. So 5, 6, 7. The 6 in the middle is the one that can be disconnected from the head sometimes, so they can have disorganized thinking. Not always. They are the one that usually you can tell when the anxiety and fear shows up. And the 7 is called the Peter Pan enthusiast. They are happy, so he's escaping any negative feelings by seeking adventure, fun activities, the next exciting event. So when you see them, you don't see anxiety. When you see 5, the focus is really just on seeking knowledge. And so they all show up a bit differently. So I think in any society, in any organization, our weakness, I mean, going back to the types, our weakness is our strength. Okay. Our gifts can also be where we're challenged. Because if I'm a 2 and my gift, let's say, is to read people and anticipate taking care of people's needs, is to people please, that can also be a problem because you can forget yourself. And you can be crossing boundary. You have such an urge to be needed, right? So anything can show up that serves you or does not serve you. So self-awareness is really important. And that's why you study this thing, is having the self-awareness. So I just said a lot.
Well, now
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, I know, because I mean, as much as I've heard of it now, when we're discussing all the types, people's heads can be swimming like, oh, wait a minute. But I think for people that are listening to this, the best thing they could do is you can take the Enneagram test free online. This is what's nice, because you can get an idea from these 9 different types of. I kind of look at it like God made 9 different computers, with different kinds of software, and they all have to interact with each other, but they have to learn that the computer next to them is different than them, and so it doesn't get too confusing. A person can take a free test. You can just put free Enneagram test on Google, and some different sites will come up. I know the one that I use and I tell my clients about is called Eclectic Energies. eclectic energies. Now, Elsa may know of, Elsa, do you know another site that does a good job at where people could, take the test to find out what number they are?
It's so easy. You just put in Enneagram Test. There's so many of them, and you want to check them all out. And usually it's good to answer those questions thinking what you're like in your 20s and not now, how you were back then. The thing I want to really stress is that being humans that we are, we tend to judge what we don't understand. Okay. So we approach the world through our own particular lens and worldview. And when people don't think like us and don't respond and don't act like us, we can help but judge. And this is automatic. And the opposite of automatic is mindfulness, right? And being present. And mindfulness, and I think we all go through using the Enneagram to block people and label people. Oh, you're this is why I don't like you. So let's be honest and own that we do that. But we have to go beyond that. We use it to understand people, that might be why they're coming from. And yeah.
Yeah, for instance, twos, I guess I call them the caregivers. I had relationships, serious relationships with two women that were twos. If I'd have known about Enneagram and I'd had them take the test and I could see they were two, oh my gosh, it would have solved so many problems because I didn't understand where they were coming from, but when I read that and I realized, wow, no wonder their software, the way that they react is this way. There's nothing wrong with them, it's just that's the way they react, because twos, they can walk in a room and as they're looking around, they know what everybody needs, they're because they're always looking for how they can meet somebody's needs. But Elsa, too, when people learn about their Enneagram, they learn their positive attributes, and then they learn the things that some people would say their downside or the parts that are maybe need to be looked at or fixed in a way. And the Enneagram will show you pretty much when people find out what their number is and then they go online and they type in Enneagram 2 and they get all this information and all these videos and they just laugh their heads off. They go, oh my God, these people are just like me, and they start seeing that the problems they have are all similar. Like twos seem to have different issues to work with in life than threes or in fours and fives. So this is a really good way for people to really get to the root of how they're made so they know why they're reacting the way they are.
Well, this is the interesting thing that everyone has a different journey with the Enneagram. You have people who started reading it and it's just too hard. Because if they have a tendency to self-shame, if they have trauma, and they read something negative about themselves, it could be too painful, and they might reject it. And then you have people who have go through different types over the years. It takes them 20 years to finally land on the right type. So it's different journey for different people.
Well, and I've done that even just figuring out when I have a knowing of like somebody's sign. Let's say if they're a Leo, if they're a Scorpion or Scorpio or that kind of thing. Like the difference between my husband being a double Leo and me being a double Cancerian. I'm a double water. He's a double fire. If he's too much fire, I have to understand I can't be too much water and want to put out. He's going to feel like I'm trying to put out his fire. It's just when you know more about our teams, when we know more about who we're working with, it just gives us more tools. And then, for me, like myself being a double crab, that I have to be careful that I don't put myself underneath a rock, that I go hide underneath things. Now, I might tell my husband it's been a stressful day and I'm going to kind of shut down for a little while. And that's my way of saying I just need to get underneath the water and just let the water go washing over me. Just like he being a Leo, if you watch a pride, a lion pride, a male needs to go have his rest. He doesn't want to be up and moving all the time. Yeah. Honey, go take your time. It's just that it's just knowing our strengths, but yet if we know our weaknesses, it makes us stronger. And that's the thing that people don't understand, I think, a lot of times, is that our vulnerability, our weakness, is actually our greatest strength, because of the fact that when you know your weakness, it's that theory that, in a group of people, you're only as strong as your weakest point. But if you know your weakest point, then you can make that weakest point stronger by knowing it. And when you need to be there, you can say, okay, this is a tool of mine to just shut down, or have emotional moment, or have my inner child come out, or whatever you want to call it. But it helps you to move forward. And it's a blessing when we know those sides of us.
Yeah.
And like I took a course one time, a 6-month thing, where we did the 7 gluttonies, and we had to practice, or not the 7 deadly sins. And so it's like one day we had to practice gluttony, and the rest of the day we had to practice being of service and helping. And so you had to learn what the extremes were, to know when you see them, you go, oh, I'm having one of those moments, aren't I? Okay, yeah, I see it. Okay, yeah. I can shift that now. Thank you.
So, I mean, what is weakness? What is weakness? Because someone can show up a certain way, right? Like when I can have a friend who's very sensitive and say, how are you, Elsa? Like constantly wanting to take care of me. And I can be in a place like, whoa, I'm okay. I don't need to be taken care of, right? And someone else can like, oh, God, that's exactly what I need to hear today. I so appreciate that. That means a lot to me, right? So it's all about the intention, the awareness behind it, when to use it, who you're using it with. And so it's like even when people are going through tough times, a positive time by saying, you know what, it's going to be okay. But if you're dealing with an intense type, and you say that, just being aware, you saying that actually doesn't help them, right? Or an intense type trying to comfort a positive type, like, it's going to be okay. The positive, like, what? I am okay. And so it's just really about when you're aware of who you are, the more you know yourself, the more you know others. The more you know yourself, the more you can intuit others, because then you have a boundary. You know where you end and the other person begins. If you don't know who you are, you keep projecting yourself onto other people. So when you do know, then you tune into the person. You show up in a way you learn to speak different languages. When you study a system like Enneagram, you learn to speak different people's different languages. If I'm going to be working with different clients, I speak to what they can understand. And that's the only way I could help them. And to be positive with someone who is an intense type who's in pain is not very helpful. But yet that doesn't make the positivity a weakness. It's just in the wrong time with the wrong person. It's actually a gift in another situation. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, don't you think it's a big step in awareness for people, even if they're just listening to this talk and they get all confused, is just having this awareness that the universe made different types of people. Like, in other words, everybody isn't just like you. And, so that, when I was in hypnotherapy college, the big thing that helped us, like before we'd see a client, we'd have them write a sentence, and we learned to analyze their handwriting. And we could tell from their handwriting whether they were more introvert or more extrovert. And they would give a free class to the community, and it would be full from people from the community that were just coming to a free class at the university. And it was all about introvert, extrovert, And when you walk by the room, I remember walking by the room, it was just full in there, and you thought you were listening in a comedy club, because people were realizing that the extroverts react to a situation differently than introverts do, and just having that knowledge that maybe if you're an extrovert, you're married to an introvert, and you start learning some of the introvert characteristics, then you realize that you're okay and they're okay too, even though they react to situations differently. So, for instance, introverts work more off assumptions. We assume things more. Extroverts are more to look at things literally, So, for instance, my relationship at the time I was with I'm an introvert. She was an extrovert. So I would say, okay, I was a comedian at the time, and I'd just say I had a show in Chicago, and I'd say, okay, sweetheart, I'm going to Chicago, and I'm going to be gone for about a week, and I'll be back. Okay, so I'd come back, and I'd be just happy to see her, like, oh man, I miss you, and she was like kind of sullen, like, and I said, well, what's the matter? What happened? She says, well, you never called me while you were gone. I mean, you didn't keep in touch, and it didn't even occur to me as an introvert to do that. It's just like I told her I'd love her, I'd be back in a week, and here I am, and everything's good, But with an introvert, I mean extrovert, they like more interaction, they like more closeness that way, So the fact that I knew about introvert extrovert, then I went, oh my gosh, okay, now here's where, to keep the relationship good, we need to talk. Me knowing that she likes to have more communication, and her knowing that I don't need that extra communication, we met in the middle, and I said, okay, sweetheart, what I'll do is when next trip I go, how about every 2 or 3 days I give you a call and we'll have a talk? She says, yeah. And she felt so good that I was, because I was coming out of my, what would normally be for me, I had to learn to be a little more like her. And then she had to go, well, he's not calling me every day, but at least he's calling me every other day or every third day. And it worked out fine from then. So, but it was that fact of understanding that we're different, we look at things differently. Otherwise you get people getting all this in it, fights and the introverts going, well, she's telling me I don't care about her. And I know I do, because I'm doing everything, I'm doing everything right within my software, to show her that, and she's not getting it. So what Enneagram does is it breaks it up even more, instead of just introvert extrovert, it gets to it's more finesse to it. I mean, you learn more intricacies, don't you, Elsa?
Yeah, and there's so many different kind of differences that, aside from the Enneagram, we have the word neurodiversity. We all wired differently neurologically, and there's still a lot needs to be learned about that. So we're talking about awareness, how having the awareness helps you, right, Regan? The thing is that some people actually do not have the capacity for awareness or self-reflection. Some people don't. So you can be any of those type, and any of the 9 type, and have someone. So a type 9 with awareness versus a type 9 without awareness is almost like 2 different beasts, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things I have to keep working on myself is that when I am dealing with someone who don't have the kind of self-awareness, and first you thought it by talking to them, you will help them become self-aware. But over time, you find out some people don't have the capacity. And some people can have it in the moment, but cannot sustain it or generalize it. And so for people who do have it, they don't understand people who have no self-awareness. So we judge. We get frustrated. What? They don't care? They're not learning? Like, what's their problem? Well, some people don't have that. And they can be very difficult people to deal with. And to know that it's just how they're wired, something they can help for whatever reason I don't understand. But just to even keep that in mind is so important.
And Elsa, now you worked with the prison population, correct?
Jail. That's the difference between
jail. Okay, and
I did in the past.
That brings up something I'm curious about, because we're talking about some people being aware and other people not being so aware. Now, my prejudice or whatever would be that, okay, so you work with the jail population, so I'm guessing when you have all of these people and you're trying to help them, that people in jail would be very unaware people. But did you find that the case, or did you find some people that were in jail that were very aware?
I think people are everywhere the same. You could have professional, you can be very successful people who are not aware. I mean, it's just, here's the thing. You can be an aware person and don't know that you're an aware person. You can be an unknown, having someone who has no awareness and think you're so self-aware. I mean, that's the trick. I worked with one inmate and I read his chart, and I was picking up all kinds of information about this person. And he did a lot of bad things, but something tells me, because there's antisocial behavior, right? And there's antisocial personality. So you have good people make bad choices and good people who do bad things, right? I'm reading his chart and I'm getting this I'm getting his soul, right? On a soul level, this is a good person, right? Who did bad things. So I went and talked to him, and so I said to him, I said, ability. So he doesn't excuse, he doesn't talk much, right? I said something's not adding up for me. You seem to be someone who really is on a certain level of consciousness, but then living on a lower level of consciousness, right? So if something's not adding up to me, what is that? Now that day he has planned to ask the judge to let him out of jail, and he was going to go use and then get, because he's going to be on parole or probation. He was going to come back after he used, get caught. So after I talked to him, he took the nerve. He said, I don't know what you did to me. I don't know what you did to me. He said, he changed his mind and asked the judge to put him in a treatment program instead. And so it's like, so sometimes when you're working with people, it's like you can do psychological work, you can do soul work. And I can't even tell you how I do it, but it's just something that you feel, you pick up, it's like a feeling, knowing, in thoughts or in feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
but he has someone, if he has the right guidance and the right person to talk to, he has great potential to so much self-awareness, right? He has the capacity, but he just didn't have the guidance and the right person to guide him.
Do you feel that that you made a difference in a lot of their lives? I mean, were they forced to come to see you when they're in jail, or is it something that they can choose to see a therapist or not? Do they have to see you?
They don't get to really see. I'm not allowed to do therapy in there. I do assessment, but I show up as who I am. I can't help but be who I am. I mean, and I get in trouble for being who I am. I'm an empath. I feel what I feel, and I will say what comes through me, and I get in trouble for that. Did I make a difference? I can only go with how I felt. I have one woman who's never told anyone that she was raped.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the thing about a lot of those people that get into those situations, sadly, that they weren't taught better to do better.
Yeah.
And or the entity of addiction came and attached to them, and then that took over. And I always claim that anybody who's addicted to anything, there's an entity, an extra energy that comes on and sits with them and helps them not make good decisions. It's that thing that whispers in their ear, and it's pretty big and it's loud. And
well, the funny thing about that, though, they end up being in jail and prison with other addicts who are totally open to any kind of invasions. You know what I mean? Intrusion. So, like in her case, she's a drug addict, so people judge her, including my coworker. She gets labeled and judged, right, as an addict. So if she wants medication to help sleep, she's trying to get drugs. That's how they look at it. Well, she told me every time she closed her eyes, she see her father being on top of her, right? So after a few years, well, not a few years, a few months later, her mother called me. I worked at jail and I worked at the crisis unit. The mother called me and said, I don't know what you did, but you helped my daughter. She was in therapy a few years before she ended up being in jail, and you helped her. Can you see her on an outpatient? Because that 30 minutes you spent with her made a big difference. And unfortunately, that would be dual relationship. I couldn't accept her as a client. But it's powerful when we get to make a difference in someone else's life. And you can be a witness. You can name something that has never been named, something painful, and it can create a kind of a release and opening for things to move. You know what I mean?
Oh, I so agree. There's been times where I see somebody just kind of go, and it's like, oh, what a blessing for you. What a blessing for you. It just, that's what I'm just so grateful. I work in an elementary school, and I do the same thing there as I do in my private sessions with people doing intuitive work, that it's amazing when somebody just kind of takes that breath.
Yeah.
And they realize, oh, that demon that doesn't have a mask, actually, it's worthy of seeing that what's on that mask or behind that mask that I've been hiding under.
Yes. I mean, I know I'm here. My purpose is to do, I can name two of the things. I'm here to illuminate, and I'm here to empower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us, there's just some days when you see a client and there's such a strong feeling that you just know that the universe put you together with that person.
Yes.
And that when they walked out, that somehow they were a little better than when they walked in. And that's such a good feeling to have that, feel that connection. I think that's what a lot of us therapists love about this job, is that happens frequently enough that it just keeps you coming back and wants you to just, it's such a nice feeling to be able to have some sort of knowledge that can help somebody, or to help them. And I think all we do, isn't it, when you to agree that people come into us going down a certain road, and all we have to do is shift them just a little bit so they go down the road a little bit differently, and that could make that little beginning there, when you look further down the road a year later or 2 years later, just that tiny shift can be huge, later down the road.
Well, yes, and I think some people find us when they're ready, and I don't take credit for what I do, because I think there's something bigger at work here, right? And so I am the lucky one that I get to serve. I get to be that witness, right? So, and it happens because they're ready to do the work, right? So I think you probably have the same experience. It's like there's something else working with us. It's not just us.
I know definitely there is. Yes. And that's the thing about me being intuitive, is that I do see who is working with them and myself. And that's a gift for me, to be able to give comfort to someone, to say, who feels very alone, that how can they feel the ones that are helping them?
Well, that's great, because I don't know who I'm working with, but I know I have help.
Well, you work with Raphael, Archangel Raphael works with you. You also work with an ancient one who is from your ancestry. He's like your great grandfather, who was a master at being like a shaman, like a monk type of, or in that realm. I don't know the language, because I don't know the language, but he was one of the elders of his community, who everybody came to. And so he's been helping you give that ancient wisdom that you feel in your bones. Does that make sense?
I would.
Yes.
When I'm around Elsa, I feel she's like a shaman. Elsa, you have these shaman characteristics, that you have this intuitiveness to understand a person's situation and everything. And it's really, I don't know, it's for people watching out there, I mean, she just if you're looking for a good therapist, she's excellent. She can just I don't know, it's just something about her that's just, I've always been impressed that way. I had to learn early on that you can't pull somebody into therapy, that they really have to be ready. And the way I learned that was, there was a man that I met, and he says, hey, I have PTSD, and how about I'll do a trade, and you can come, and I live down in Mexico, you come down there, live in my beach house for a while, give me therapy, and you can stay there for free. And I was free. So I said, sure, that'd be great. So I went there, thinking, because I knew some of his issues, and he had some very severe PTSD. So I'm there, and I ended up being there a year and a half. And in that year and a half, he only wanted 2 15-minute sessions of therapy. And that, we'd get started 15 minutes in, and he'd go, okay, that's all I can take. That's all I can take. He'd get up and walk out. And I keep thinking, because I had these modalities, I could fix him, I wanted to fix him. And I just wanted to pull him in and say, come on, you're brave enough. He was this big old strapping guy. But, that was my lesson, to learn that, I had to leave that place after a year and a half, because it was silly to stay there when he wasn't ready for therapy. So a person has to be ready. So people watching this, just ask yourself, there's something will tell you inside if you're ready to be a little brave and step through that door. But I think all three of us would guarantee the person that you're going to walk out with, on the path to a better you, on the path to that. Because I read in a psychology magazine that 35% of the cure of people is deciding to go to therapy. In other words, they're already 35% there. Okay. 35% is having a good relationship and feeling good with your therapist, feeling like you're a good fit. And then the other 30% are the modalities that we all use, so just deciding, I tell people when they come in to see me, I says, you're already a third of the way home because you decided to come in and get some help.
Well, I have a question about that. Can I ask a question about that? Maybe Natasha can jump into with my question. And that is about cure, right? About cure. And that is that I think people are okay what they choose and don't choose, whether they're ready or not ready, because they're on the path they're meant to be on.
Yes.
And they're here to learn what they learn at the level of wherever they're at. And so from that perspective, there's really no right or wrong. It's where they're at and what they choose to do. So it's like, right, if someone chooses to not work with me or not do the work, I mean, I'm speaking from a certain perspective. I mean, in reality, when you're with someone that you love and you see their suffering, you see what I'm saying? So there is the higher perspective, just like it is what it is, and you take that. And there is a reality of loved ones struggling with your loved ones who won't get help, right? There's two perspectives. And sometimes I struggle a little bit with that because you know what? I'm just going to trust that this is their path. And as painful as it is, and I have to really talk to the empath in me, that this is the journey and this is what they have to go through this lifetime to do the work that they might do, I don't know, next for maybe another.
Oh, stuck again. She'll come back.
Yep, she will.
There she is.
Not being attached to fixing, not being attached to helping, and in a place of acceptance more. I can't always do that, but it's something I strive to do. I'm curious about the thought from your perspective.
Well, I this is the way that I navigate because of my husband and I being so different. He's very black and white. I'm very gray, and I'll give you an example. I go to chiropractor, get things fixed, and she works on ankles, knees, extremities. My husband will struggle with a knee problem for months. And I'll have my knee problem in the middle of his knee problem, and I'll get mine fixed, and he'll still struggle. I try to lead people better than I find them. If that's emotionally, and if they can't handle emotionally, then I may do it physically. If they can't do it physically, I'll do it spiritually. And if they can't do it spiritually, I'll do it by just presenting love. Because that's always my fall back into is love. And so if that just means that I just leave them with a little bit more love than what they had, that's leaving them better than I found them. And that's all I'm responsible for. Yeah. Because I can tell you that some people are comfortable with being their own self-image. And some of that has a little bit of victimhood in it. Or a little bit of this, or a little bit it's like a stew, It's like some people like it spicy, some people like it a little bland, but it's not for me to judge. It's for me to honor what it is and whoever that is. And sometimes it's just me walking into a room to support, and sometimes it's me just sitting down and like helping a kindergartner write with their pencil. Let me put my hand on you. Now let me have my hand on you. Or with you, and you do the writing. I'll just make sure you guide it, when you go off the line, I'll help you. It's all in that perspective of how and when to negotiate with someone. When is the door open? When is it? When it's not. And that's called grace. Giving somebody honor and grace of where they're at. And sometimes it's where they're at.
Yeah. Oh, now I noticed we're getting close to the end of the hour, and Elsa, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, you do online therapy too, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
Okay.
yes, I do.
How would somebody get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about you being their therapist?
Well, they can email me, or they can call my work line.
Okay.
My email is my name is Elsa. Well, you can see my name on it. My email is my first and last name, and then you put numerical 1@yahoo.com. So Elsa Ng 1@yahoo.com. My last name sounds like ENG, but it's just N and G, ELSANG 1@yahoo.com.
Okay. So let me go.
And
It's ELSANG.
I'm putting it in the
Oh, good.
the notes.
Okay.
And my work number is 415-515-7103.
Okay, there I put it in the chat for you.
Okay.
Okay. So anybody that's watching this will be able to get it from that way. That's
Yeah,
good,
and I'll put it in the comments too, so that it's on the note for you.
Yeah, and if
So-
anybody wants to get a hold of me, it's up on the screen there. It's visittheafterlife.com. And I didn't explain it at the beginning, but as a hypnotherapist, I specialize in life between lives therapy and also past life regression, as well as regular therapy for people that just want to go that way. But I'm with the Newton Institute, one of 220, and we have we're in 46 countries, and we're doing research on what happens when a person dies and where they go and what they do when they get there. And we have found out we pretty much know now after 65,000 clients, and so it's a form of therapy where you actually, in your soul self, go to the other side, and a list of questions that you've prepared, you can get answers from a council of wise elders on the other side about your current life. And there's a lot more to it. You can see videos on it at visittheafterlife.com. And Natasha, how should people get a hold of you?
You can reach me at my website, which is angelicclarifications.com, or you can reach me at natasha@angelicclarifications.com. And I love to leave people better than I find them. And I can tell you that all three of us here, sitting here, that would be a high integrity intention for us, because of the fact that we have those souls that are older, knowing, and just, this world deserves to feel better about themselves. Anybody, two-legged, four-legged, whoever, just to help them feel better about themselves. And we're all going through a rough time. And please know, it's really hard to do it ourselves. I've even reached out to a couple friends a couple times, because I was in need of just somebody to listen who understood. And, it's just time to reach out. And because this is a door open for all of us to be our better selves if we want to.
Okay.
And I'd like to say that be sure to let yourself have your feelings, because if you don't have your feelings will have you.
Oh,
So
exactly.
if you need to get mad, get sad, get over it, please do.
Mm-hmm. And be kind to those when you do need to. That's why I tell people, I tell kids all the time, go scream into a pillow. Scream into a pillow. Punch something, do something. Talk to your anger, because anger is something that if you don't treat it good now, it's going to come out later. And yes. Same with sadness and grief. A lot of us are going through grief, and anger is a part of grief. Anger is a big part of grief. Well, blessings to all. Oh, go ahead, Regan.
Yeah, I found out through, we all know that when we don't deal with our emotional issues, they'll show up as physical problems. So a lot of times the physical problems we have, have their root in stuffing emotions. So therapy is good for that, just to get it out. Like you said,
It helps with digestion, knees, ankles, back, neck, headaches. It does help a lot with a lot of different things, being able to get it out. Blessings to all. And I hope you come back next Monday at 4:00 Pacific time. And I will be on Wednesday at 4:00 Pacific time. And please, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please subscribe or or get the memory button for saying you'll be on or we'll be
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
Bless.
and Elsa, hold on, because I want Natasha to talk to you for a minute after the show. Okay, so
Sure.
don't
Sure.
click off. Okay, everybody, we'll
Bye.
see you next week.
Blessings.